Uruguayan driver who has been catching the eye, not least because he really is becoming something of a superstar back in Uruguay. The race is all shown live on Uruguayan television, and during this summer break that we've had for the European F3 Open, because they were last in action in mid-July, he has been back in Uruguay fulfilling a huge range of media commitments. Urrutia, who's scored 2 victories already this year, including in the preceding race at Silverstone. So he goes into the summer break on a high. He's got a little bit of ground to make up in terms of the championship, but unlike Stuvik, he has got already really 2 bad results out of the way. He's had 2 non-point scoring races. They both came at Paul Ricard at the very start of the season. So essentially, from here on in, every point that Santiago Urrutia scores will count toward the overall championship. The same goes Fred Jones, because he did not appear at Paul Ricard at the very start of the season due to a conflicting commitment, whereby Sandy Stuvik, his 2 worst finishes of the year have been 5th places, which came at Jerez and Silverstone, the first race of the weekend, respectively. So Stuvik will be looking, ideally, if he can, to score another victory. A driver to draw your attention to is a new driver for this weekend, 9th on the grid, DAV Racing Brandon Maisano, the French driver who has raced with considerable success in the Italian Formula 3 Championship for the past couple of seasons, making his European F3 Open debut this weekend. It's also the first time for the DAV Racing and Lara F312. Hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit here in Belgium for the 6th round of the 2013 European F3 Open. This, the 11th race of the season around the 7-kilometre Spa-Francorchamps circuit. 13 laps or 35 minutes await us with a full field of cars assembled for the European F3 Open. This, the 6th of 8 stops, because from Spa they go to Monza in October, and the season finishes at the Circuit de Catalunya in November. And the way that the championship is poised at the moment, I suspect that we're going to go all the way through to the wire. My name is Ben Evans. I'm here in the commentary box overlooking Sandy Stuvik's spot on pole position on the grid in a very overcast and slightly chilly day. There was a 50% chance of rain for this afternoon, but at the moment the rain has stayed away, although qualifying this morning was held in damp and tricky conditions. It's given us a slightly different looking grid to how we might have expected, with 1 or 2 of the front runners, most notably Nelson Mason, some way down the running order. But in pole position it is the championship leader, the tyre driver Sandy Stuvik. He's not finished lower than 5th in all of the 10 races thus far this year. Sharing the front row of the grid with him, it is his RP Motorsport teammate, the Frenchman Alexandre Cougnaud, who lies 7th in the standings. And Cougnaud just 1 podium finish already this season. That came at Jerez, and this will be his 2nd trip to the rostrum. 3rd on the grid, the driver 2nd in the championship standings from the UAE, Ed Jones, already 3 victories this season, which is sharing the most wins with his teammate Nelson Mason. And 4th on the grid, Santiago Urrutia, the sensational teenage Uruguayan racer, really scored 2 victories this season and has been on a fantastic run of form of late, climbing up to 3rd in the championship. Let's see whether or not the 6-week or so summer break since we were at Silverstone in mid-July has blunted his chances. I very much doubt that it will have done. The first, the Emilio Vlotter, Motorsport drivers, 5th on the grid, is Hector Hurst. He's already had a win this season at the Nürburgring. Currently lies 6th in the standings, though he had a disappointing home round at Silverstone, compounded with a race 2 requirement. 6th on the grid, then Alexander Toril, the Spanish driver who has been steadily racking up the points this season. And Toril, you would feel, is not too far away from scoring a maiden victory. 7th on the grid, Jonathan Legris, back into the European F3 Open after a 4-year break. He's only visited a racing circuit, he was saying to me earlier on, 3 times in the past 4 years. And having last raced, actually in the European F3 Open back in 2009, former star from the BMW Championship, making a very welcome return. Making his European F3 Open debut this weekend is the Frenchman Brandon Maisano, who has raced with a great deal of success for the past 2 seasons in the Italian Formula 3 Championship, and this a new venture for the DAV team. It's their first time running as Lara F312. 9th on the grid, then the Israeli driver Yaron Stern. Again, he's had more than his fair share of bad luck this season, but Stern, with a good race, could well challenge for the podium. Good to see Alexei Chuklin so well up the grid in 10th position, the Russian driver who's had all sorts of bad luck this year, but he had a fantastic performance at Silverstone back in July, where he really did a fine job under sustained pressure from some of his rivals. 11th on the grid for BVM Racing, Vicky Piria, driver who knows this place well from her time racing in the GP3 Championship. And given that this is a circuit where the drivers can really slipstream using the length of the Kemmel Straight, using the length of the run out of Stavolo, then they can overtake. So here is the grid then, with Sandy Stuvik in pole position. Alexandra Kugno showing the front row of the grid with him. Row 2, Ed Jones lining up in 3rd. Artur Janels it is then who completes the top 12. He shares row 6 with Vicky Piria. That's a good qualifying performance from the Polish driver, who's had a fairly difficult season thus far in the Campos racing car. Tommaso Mencini it is, who is the first of the Copper class runners, 13th on the grid, the Copper class being for the slightly older Lara F308, and then second in class Cameron Twynham lines up 15th from Gerardo Nieto. Completing the top 18, it's Valeria Carballo and Trino Rojas. Sean Walkinshaw, who's had a very busy summer running his team during the summer break in the BRDC Formula 4 Championship, lines up in 19th position ahead of Che Wan Lim. Nelson Mason down in 22nd position. The Canadian driver who has already scored 3 victories this season, fortunately had a spin on new tyres when he was trying to put together his qualifying run earlier on, and that has put him a long way down the standings. Huan Zhu, 26th on the grid, upgrading to the Lara F312 this weekend. We've seen him previously this year in the F308. Great to see Sadel Faisal back after being inverted last time out at Silverstone. He lines up in 27th. Richard Gonda, the Slovakian driver, completing the 30-car grid. And the mechanics just beginning to clear the grid now. And then the cars will set off on their formation at their last chance to really a view of how the car's feeling, what the track conditions are, because it is a little bit drier than it was for qualifying earlier on, but at the same time it is overcast and also really quite chilly as well. So the last few mechanics just being moved clear of the grid. Just 1 minute to go, and then Sandy Stuvik will lead the field away on the formation lap. If you've never seen the European F3 Open before, to explain, there are the 2 classes. There is the principal class running the Lara F312 chassis. There is the Copper class, which is the slightly older Lara F308 chassis. They all run on a controlled Dunlop tyre. And other parts of the car, such as the engine, such as the gearbox, are all controlled parts as well. They're all supplied by the GT Sport organisation. What that serves to do is give drivers all the learning and experience that they need to do in Formula 3, but without the escalating costs that you sometimes see in other Formula 3 championships. And that is why the F3 Open this year has been pretty much the best supported Formula 3 championship in Europe. Always a grid just around the 30-car mark as the drivers heading through the legendary Eau Rouge corner. I'm sure they've all been glued to the Belgian Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago before then heading out of Radion and on to the Kemmel Straight. We've got then the long run down the Kemmel Straight before they hit the braking zone for BELGIUM, and this is really one of the principal overtaking opportunities on the lap, because the drivers can really use the slipstream effect. As the car in front punches the hole through the air, it means those behind can follow in that slipstream and to pull out and try and pick their way through. Then head out of BELGIUM and down into the right-hand hairpin, Bruxelles, before heading on to another quick downhill left-hander, Pouin, before they then head into the double left-hander, which has never been named. It's just known as the double left. And again, tricky corner drivers. This is not really a section of the circuit where they can overtake, but it's certainly a section of the circuit where you can begin to put pressure on the cars in front, try and invite them to make a mistake. Just a little bit of weaving going on, trying to get some heat into the tyres. There is Artur Janos. His best result of the year to date, 11th position at Silverstone, so he will be very, very keen to get himself into the top 10. They then head out to the double left into Fagnes, where you can possibly try and find your way through, but already really, when they're out of Fagnes, they're beginning to set up the campus, and the long run on towards Blanchimont. This, again, probably the second section of the circuit where you can use the slipstream to very, very good effect to try and get the toe of the car in front, as the rain is coming down on that far side of the circuit. So as they came out of Corbett Paul Frere, it would appear to be a little bit of a shower coming down the far side of the circuit, and this is the classic Spa conundrum, which is that because the circuit is so long, over 7 kilometres, but not only that, it's a circuit that covers a very large layout. You have other lengthy circuits, but because they fold back on each other, actually the overall circuit site isn't that significant. But here at Spa, it's a long circuit. It's a circuit where essentially BELGIUM is the best part of 3 kilometres away from the start and finish rate, and that means it can rain on one side of the circuit and not the other, and that is possibly the situation that we're seeing over towards Fagnes. In the meantime, though, Sandy Stuvik and Alexandra Kugner, there's Alexander Toril coming towards the grid and getting ready for the start of the race. It's 13 laps or 35 minutes, and generally speaking, we always go to laps unless we have a safety car intervention. So the cars towards the rear of the field just getting themselves into formation. One car that is missing from the back of the grid is Damiano Ferraranti in the Corvette Competizione car. Had a nasty incident at Eau Rouge this morning in qualifying. He's fine. The car very emphatically not, and work ongoing. Not so much in the hope of getting the car out for this race, but certainly, provided the tub hasn't been damaged, then there is the possibility that we'll see Damiano out in action for the second race of the weekend tomorrow. So the Slovakian driver, Richard Gonda, who leads the Copper Class Championship over Cameron Schweinman by 6 points, coming to his marks through the grid. He will be hoping to pick his way up through the field as the race then going to get underway very, very shortly. They're all in position. We're waiting for the green flag from the marshal at the rear of the pack, which we get now. So the drivers turn their attention to the gantry. It's been a long summer break, but the European F3 Open is about to get underway, and away we go. It's a super start from Sandy Stuvik, a terrible getaway from Alexandra Kugno, and it means that Ed Jones and Hector Hurst have both been able to dive past Kugno, possibly as they head to La Source for the first time. It's very busy in midfield, and there's a couple of cars that have gone around, and that's a bit chaotic. There's several cars that have gone spinning around. One or two of them at the very back of the shop that appear to be locked together. None of that, though, any concern for the race of the Sandy Stuvik. He leads through Eau Rouge, but goes off and wide, and it must be raining, possibly at Eau Rouge as well. Stuvik gathers it all up, but it's clearly very tricky conditions. So now into the lead, it's Ed Jones as another car goes off at the top of Radillon, and these are treacherous conditions for the drivers in the European F3 Open. You can see that there's sheen just glistening off the slick tyres, so it's beginning to rain a little bit around the circuit. Great race, though, in these early stages, as it's Ed Jones who leads the way. Second place is Sandy Stuvik. Third place is his teammate, Santiago Urrutia. And then just in behind, it's Alexandra Kugno in fourth. In the third, the RP Motorsport cars, Hector Hurst in fifth. Alexei Chuklin it is in sixth position. And the Russian driver trying to go around the outside of his teammate, and he's going to succeed in so doing. So that's a great move from Alexei Chuklin. He goes into fifth. Another car heads off in the background. Suspect that's probably Cameron Schweinman in the Team West Tech car. It's either him or teammate Liam Venter. as Alexei Chuklin now making a bid to gain further ground on the tail of Alexandra Kugno. Hector Hurst, though, also looking likely to be able to pick his way through, as more trouble. The DAV cars goes off as Jones and Stuvik go side by side. In third place, it's Urrutia. Behind, it's all getting a little bit chaotic. The driver's really struggling for grip, and off goes Alexandra Kugno at Fania. So Kugno rotates himself out of fourth position. So it's now Hector Hurst in fourth. This man, number 5, Alexei Chuklin, in fifth. Up to sixth has come Artur Janos in the Campos racing car, as they accelerate now on towards Blanchimont, and then the bus stop chicane to bring an end to an end what's been a really somewhat chaotic first lap of the race. Let's hope none of the cars that had the spin at the source are still in position, as through Blanchimont they come, and then begins up for the bus stop chicane as Ed Jones it is, the Team Westec driver, who leads the way. Stuvik in second, Urrutia third, fourth Hector Hurst, fifth Alexei Chuklin, sixth Artur Janos, and going very nicely behind a lot of them, braking far too late for the chicane, as over the line, reeling off the first lap of the race, is Ed Jones. Second place, Sandy Stuvik. Third place is Santiago Urrutia. Fourth, Hector Hurst. Fifth, Chuklin. Then the rest of them all scrubbing position. There is Cameron Twynham. So Twynham, so it's Liam Venter, I suspect, then, with the drive we saw go from the background. So it's Twynham who leads the copper class as well, and reasonably comfortably so. So it's been a very good lap for Cameron Twynham. Further behind, though, it's probably been a little bit less enjoyable, as Urrutia has a big wobble coming out to Radio. Right here is a replay of La Source for the first time. Some of the front runners running wide. Spins further back. Jonathan Legris, I think, one of the cars involved in that, as Jones still leads just from Urrutia. But what about this for third? Around the outside of Santiago Urrutia goes Hector Hurst. So Urrutia down to fourth. Fifth remains Chuklin. So we've got Ed Jones leading the way with Sandy Stuvik in pursuit. They're having a good scrap. Then for third, it's getting pretty frenetic here. It's Hector Hurst, Urrutia, Chuklin, Janos, and then coming up through the field, that's Nelson Mason. And Mason, what an incredible start to the race from Nelson Mason. He was well outside the top 20 on the grid, but he is up into the top 10 and actually part of the fight for third position. The leading duo have just broken clear. So there is Mason, and he makes the move on Brandon Maisano. So that is good enough for 8th place for Nelson Mason, midway through the second lap of the race. So they head in towards Fania. Mason's next target is going to be Yarin Stern, the Emilio de Vlota driver, the Israeli who has had the best result this season of second position. This is the battle we're watching now. So there is the Canadian driver, Nelson Mason. Absolutely phenomenal first lap, not least because of all the incidents going on around him. Stay out of trouble and pick his way through like that. Very, very mature driving from Mason. The bright yellow car, a little bit further back, that's the copper class leader, Cameron Twynham. As Mason's going for the move into Blanchimont, surely not. Very, very brave stuff from Nelson Mason. Also a change for the lead as Sandy Stuvik takes the lead back from Ed Jones as they hit the brakes into the bus stop chicane for the second time of asking. Around the right, then the left, so it's Stuvik who leads, Jones in second, and Nelson Mason had gone through, so Nelson Mason makes the pass on Yarin Stern. So across the line, what a race we've got on our hands here. 11 laps to go. Stuvik busy defending from Jones. Urrutia back up into third position, really coming towards the leading duo. Then we have got in fourth place Hector Hurst, fifth place Alexei Chuklin, sixth Artur Janos, and then seventh Nelson Mason. So Stuvik and Jones, nose to tail, throw a rouge. The same for Urrutia and Hurst. Good scrap going on behind. There's Cameron Twynham leading the copper class at the moment from Richard Gonda, who's come up to second in the class, 14th overall. It's Chaewon Lim, who's currently third in class, as Ed Jones reclaims the lead from Santiago Urrutia. So Jones using the slipstream to very good effect, as we predicted he might, and immediately reclaims the advantage, though Sandy Stuvik looking to fight back almost immediately. So that's a train of cars accelerating out of Le Con. Meanwhile, the leading quartet, you'd argue, come together because Sandy Stuvik is being caught here by Santiago Urrutia. It's one of the, it's Trino Rojas possibly, one of the RP Motorsport Copper class cars which has been into the pits and then re-emerged. So Jones leads, Sandy Stuvik in second, being caught by his teammate Santiago Urrutia. Then Hector Hurst in fourth position. Cameron Schweinum still leading the copper class. He's then got Dennis Nagulin and Vicky Piria busy, locked-in battle just behind. There's good tussle beginning to emerge as well for 5th, 6th and 7th, headed by Alexei Chuklin at the moment. He's got Artur Janos and then Nelson Mason closing in. So after a frantic first couple of laps, the race just beginning to settle down now, and Ed Jones, as he gets a feel for the grip, a feel for the conditions, trying to move clear of his principal rival in the championship battle, Sandy Stuvik, as Jones accelerates on towards the very, very quick left-hander at Blanchimont. She exits now just out over the rumble strip a little bit before sprinting on towards the braking zone for the bus stop chicane, down through the gears. This is the opportunity maybe for Stuvik to close in just a little bit. Then Urrutia in 3rd, sliding his car, trying to get onto terms with the leading duo. And what Urrutia in 3rd and Hexhurst in 4th would really like is to see the leading duo begin to slow each other up in terms of squabbling with each other, but as they turn through the source, that's not really happening. We have seen though a change for 6th, and it's now Nelson Mason up into 6th position. He has found a way past Artur Janos, so great stuff there from Mason. So his next target is Alexei Chuklin. He's going to maybe try and challenge into Eau Rouge. He's not really quite close enough to Chuklin on the way, and instead what he look to do is use the Citroën on the way out, which is exactly what Sandy Stuvik's looking to do to Ed Jones. So the pair of them come out of Radion side by side, the battle to lead the race. It's now Sandy Stuvik who reclaims the advantage as he and Jones sprint towards Les Combes, and Jones content to let it go on this occasion, but they'll almost be counting now the number of laps they got through to the end of the race, because they're able to pass each other like this each and every time down the Kemmel Straight. You don't necessarily want to be leading into the final lap, and all the while they've got Santiago Urrutia coming towards them. Dramas further back, oh dear, and that's contact between Alexander Toril and Dennis Nagulin. Nagulin in the white car, turning the car of Toril, and really just going for space that wasn't there possibly. So the pair of them entangling each other, those behind taking evasive action, and Alexei Chuklin has now been passed by Nelson Mason, who's already romping clear. There is Mason, 5th place, the second of the blue cars. He's already charging on to the tail of Hexhurst. Then it's this man, Alexei Chuklin, in 6th, Artur Janos, the white car, in 7th. But this is Janos' most impressive performance of the season so far. And then he has got European F3 Open rookie Brandon Maisano coming in onto his tail as well. And Maisano, who's scored 3 victories in the Italian Formula 3 Championship in both the last 2 years, has really been very, very impressive this weekend. Getting nervous then on the RP Motorsport pit wall, and with good reason, because their drivers currently in 1st and 3rd, and the race order at the moment exactly mirrors the championship standings, i.e. that Sandy Stuvik leading from Ed Jones, who gets the bus stop chicane all a little bit wrong, and then 3rd place Santiago Urrutia. Over the line, reeling off the 4th lap of the race, and this has been a good lap from Sandy Stuvik. He builds up the advantage on Ed Jones to in excess of a second, and that means that Ed Jones might not be able to challenge. This time coming out, Radion as being pushed onto the grass by Vicky Piria is Richard Gondra, as he looks to come on terms with Cameron Schweinum. Also looking to recover is Jonathan Legris. So we've got the battle for the copper class, and that is the bright yellow car of Cameron Schweinum, and then the black car that's 3rd in the train, Richard Gondra. They're busy battling for copper class honours. They've got Vicky Piria between them, and Jonathan Legris as well in hot pursuit. But this is a fine drive thus far from Cameron Schweinum, so he looks to try and reel in some of those points, as we see a change for 4th, and Nelson Mason up into 4th position. And Mason, who started 22nd on the grid, already up to 4th. Absolutely brilliant stuff from the Canadian driver. Now, can he get himself towards the rostrum? 17 places gained. We'll make that 18 now that he's up to 4th. There is Yarin Stern, who, as the graphic tells you, is the only driver who hasn't really shuffled position since the start of the race. He started in 9th, he remains in 9th. Chuklin, for the time being, has just about shaken off the attention of Brandon Maisano. Maisano, meanwhile, up past Artur Janos, so he continues to gain ground as Cameron Schweinum goes across the curbs at Les Combes and loses lead the copper class as a result. So it's now Richard Gonda, the Slovakian driver, who leads the copper class. There's 3rd place man Santiago Urrutia trying to get on to terms with Ed Jones. Jones in turn just beginning to lose a bit of ground to the race leader Sandy Stuvik. Stuvik, who's not won since the second race of the season, which was held in tricky conditions at Paul Ricard all the way back in April. He's been leading the championship ever since the Paul Ricard round. But the seniors' advantage steadily eroded over the past couple of rounds. What he really wanted to do is score his second victory of the season. Last time around, he was 6 tenths of a second faster than Ed Jones. Will he be able to build out that buffer again at the end of this lap? Across the line he comes then, reels off lap 5, 8 to go. And his lead over Jones, fractionally over seconds, pretty much where we were, with then Santiago Urrutia closing in by a tenth of a second a lap. What they've all got to be mindful of here, though, is that the fastest man in the race by quite some margin is Nelson Mason, the Canadian driver, who on that last lap was the only driver to get into the 2:17 bracket. The rest of them in that leading group all in the 2:18s, everybody else in the 2:20s and beyond. Aaron Stern, see, trying to make ground on Artur Janos and just about able to do so. That all looked a little bit tight as the leading trio using the slipstream along the Kemmel Straight, all closing up on each other. That is going to be a problem for Nelson Mason. He's now not really got the advantage of a toe to try and climb up the order as Brandon Maisano gains ground, moves clear of Alexei Chuklin. That is then 6th position for the French driver Maisano. Very, very impressive European F3 Open debut for him, and also for the DAV racing team, very impressive as well. This is their first weekend running the Lara F312. Change around amongst the Campos Racing runners. It's Valerio Carballo who moves clear of Artur Janos. That then is for 9th position. They've got Alexandra Cugno, who we saw spinning early on. Coming on to tail, there is team principal Adrian Campos, watching on nervously. And based on qualifying form, you would expect Cugno to be able to move through this group fairly rapidly. Janos out over the curbs, really living a little bit dangerously here, and it means into Fagna, who's at risk of a challenge from Alexandra Cugno, and Cugno goes through, takes the position. So Alexandra Cugno up into 10th place then. So already the leaders beginning the long run back to the pits complex. There's Hector Hurst, British driver, in 5th, and he's immediately lost touch with Nelson Mason. Mason in 4th at the moment, a little bit in no man's land as well, as he's trying to get onto terms with Santiago Urrutia, and then this leading duo of Sandy Stuvik and Ed Jones. So through the bus stop chicane, Sandy Stuvik now accelerates along the pit straight. What's his advantage over Ed Jones? It would appear to be a little bit less visually than it was last time around. It is, it's down by a couple of tenths of a second. All the while, though, Nelson Mason still closing on Santiago Urrutia, but not actually this leading duo. They plunge down towards Eau Rouge. Now, is Jones going to be close enough this time around to take advantage of the slipstream along the Kemmel Straight? So into Eau Rouge they come, keeping the right foot firmly planted. Then that sheer climb uphill into Radion. Maximum commitment now onto the Kemmel Straight. And as they start the run towards Les Combes, the gap was about 4 or 5 car lengths. Let's see what Ed Jones can do in the slipstream here behind Sandy Stuvik. He's weaving around, just showing himself in Stuvik's mirror. He's not quite close enough to challenge at the end of the straight. He needs to be a car length closer as they head into Eau Rouge. He then loses maybe a tenth of a second or so through Les Combes. He was just a little bit too close to the rear wing of Stuvik on that occasion. You could see the car was understeering as he scrabbled for traction there in 4th place. Nelson Mason trying to close in on this leading trio. That's what Mason will be focused on doing. He's got 4.5 seconds, though, to try and make up in the category of racing, where to all intents and purposes these cars are pretty much identical. That is going to be a very, very big ask. So through the double left-hander with no name, and then propelling on towards Fagna, the leading duo with Santiago Urrutia in 3rd, somewhat surprisingly really able to close in on them. And again, it would appear as if Urrutia is possibly giving away a little bit of time to Nelson Mason on this lap. So out of Fagna and into Campus. Further back, Richard Gonda continuing his efforts to try and side through the field, moving clear of Jonathan Legris and also Vicky Perrier at Les Combes, all getting very, very tight as Gonda leads the copper class, and he's trying to put a couple of cars between himself and his copper class rival, Cameron Schweidem. 3rd in the copper class, by the way, remains the Korean driver, Chae-Won Lim, who is a couple of seconds adrift of that group, is into the bus stop chicane. Nelson Mason, 3 wins already this season. But this, thus far, has been probably his most impressive drive, with something like 18 places gained for Nelson Mason. So he turns into La Source now. The gap between the leaders out by 1/10 of a second on that last lap. The gap from Mason to Urrutia, somewhat frustratingly for him, also went out a little bit on that occasion. So Nelson Mason, without having the benefit of the slipstream and the toe of the cars in front, really having to work very, very hard to try and close on the group in front. And no mechanical advantage to be found. It's all in the fractions of a second that can be found here and there in terms of driving technique. By contrast, Ed Jones able to use the slipstream at the moment to stay with, but not really challenge Sandy Stuvik. But again, for Jones, he's got to think about the long game here, because we have got 6 laps remaining. We've got 15.5 minutes on the race clock, so we're almost certainly going to go to the number of laps here. And so Jones doesn't need to start challenging Sandy Stuvik just yet. Instead, what he needs to do is just stay with Stuvik and drive himself into a position where he can challenge along the Kemmel Straight on the last couple of laps. Nelson Mason, meanwhile, doing everything he can to drive the wheels off that Dallara chassis to try and get back towards Santiago Urrutia through the first sector. There was only 1/10 of a second to choose between the pair of them. It's the middle sector, though, where Mason just appears to be very, very impressive in his efforts to close in on the Uruguayan driver Santiago Urrutia. Urrutia, who during the summer break, since Silverstone has been back to Uruguay, has to fulfill all manner of media commitments, because he really is emerging as something of a superstar back in Uruguay. Santiago Urrutia is still almost in his mid-teens, and driver who is beginning to catch the eye of 1 or 2 Formula 1 team drive development programmes. Santiago Urrutia, really seen as one for the future. Opportunity to look at place gained from Alexander Torrell. So Torrell continuing to move up through the field. That was at the expense of Vicky Piria. And Piria, the former GP3 racer, isn't really left with too many places to go. Silverstone, last time out, was her most consistent weekend. Good scrap as well, going on for 3rd in the copper class, as Alexei Chuklin is coming under pressure now from Alexandra Kugno. So Kugno, who has just set the best first sector of anybody in the race thus far, up into 9th position, looking to try and demote Alexei Chuklin from 8th, as we see Shaewon Lim being challenged. I think that's a car that's out of sequence. It was Trino Rojas, who we saw emerging lap down, but he is very much part of that scrap for 3rd in the copper class. Tommaso Mencini, Sean Walkinshaw and Saladel Faisal are all in that group, running very tightly together as the battle for 8th plummets downhill and then climbs steeply up through Eau Rouge, with Kugno in the slipstream behind Alexei Chuklin, and the Russian driver may not be able to do an awful lot here. And yes, it was Trino Rojas, but it's the black, the yellow and the blue car. They are all battling for 3rd in the copper class, as this is the fight for 5th position between Brandon Maisano and Hector Hurst. So Maisano, well, a lot of people in the paddock thought he was going to be something of a dark horse this weekend. His Formula 3 experience is quite extensive compared to some of the drivers in the field, not to mention the fact he's been very successful in those races. So there is Che Lim, here is then Tommaso Mencini and Sean Walkinshaw, and all the while they're closing in on that bright greeny yellow car of Cameron Twynham, who's currently 2nd in the copper class. The silver car is a lap down its last position. That is Trino Rojas, and is unfortunately a little bit of distraction for those around. So there is Tommaso Mencini, 18th in the race overall, but more importantly for him, 4th in class. So Alexandra Kugno probably not giving away to the spectators there. Some frustration we wish to vent towards Alexei Chuklin, as we've got a problem. Is it for Ed Jones, who may have been passed there by Santiago Urrutia? Let's have a look when they come back in. No, there is Jones in pursuit of Sandy Stuvik. So is that Nelson Mason, who's just much, much closer to Urrutia? Let's see at the end of this lap, as through the bus stop chicane then, and Sandy Stuvik is being caught by Ed Jones, you'd say, and Nelson Mason is frantically trying to get onto terms with Santiago Urrutia. Urrutia across the line, and then Mason is closing in. He's still 3 seconds back, so it's possibly a lapped car that's in amongst them as well. We'll be able to see when it's a slightly closer camera shot. It's one of the Team Westtech cars. It's possibly gone a lap down. It could well be Guan Zhu then, the Chinese driver, because he has moved into a F312 this weekend. Meanwhile, the battle for the lead, accelerating along the Kemmel Straight once more. And Jones just looking to try and make ground. Nelson Mason able to put that lap on his teammate, as Stuvik meanwhile accelerates out of Les Combes with Ed Jones in pursuit, the pair of them. Then downhill into the Bruxelles hairpin. You can see absolutely nothing between the pair of them in terms of lap times at the moment, and really all that Ed Jones needs is a lap where he's a tenth of a second faster than Sandy Stuvik. That is all he needs then to mount a serious challenge along the Kemmel Straight. Battle for the lead after that very, very lively opening to the race. Now just beginning to stabilise itself, as Jones will be doing what he can to try and work up for a good run at Stuvik in the latter stage of the race. What may be going through Ed Jones' mind, though, is that in qualifying this morning, Sandy Stuvik was almost a second faster at a pure pace than Ed Jones, and of course those qualifying times sometimes are toe assisted. The teams can fly in formation in the right fashion, but even so, Ed Jones knows that in true single lap pace, Sandy Stuvik may just have the legs on him in the RP Motorsport car. Here is the third place man, his teammate Santiago Urrutia. The Uruguayan driver has still got Nelson Mason doing everything he can to close in on him, but Mason has got something like 3 seconds to overhaul, 2 or 3 seconds. That is going to be a very, very big ask, because into the bus stop chicane again, Stuvik and Jones. Just 3 to go at the end of this one. And this is the point at which Ed Jones really needs to start trying to close in onto Sandy Stuvik. The interval between them fractionally under a second. Turning through La Source, lovely shot there into the cockpit for Ed Jones, and that is absolutely perfect driving technique, just the single turn of the wheel for Jones, and that then should give him a nice clean run on towards Eau Rouge, because strange as it may sound, these Formula 3 cars have got, relatively speaking, an awful lot more grip than they've actually got in terms of straight line speed, and that means that corner speed and corner exit speed in particular is absolutely critical. We have got, unfortunately, being wheeled into his garage there, Nicholas Pohler, so the German driver in the DAV racing team. His race comes to an early end. It's through Les Combes, Stuvik and Jones. Jones able to get to within 3.5 tenths of a second of Sandy Stuvik as they reach the end of the Kemmel Straight. That is not enough, though. Down into the Bruxelles hairpin. And the problem that Jones has got is he really, if he gets any closer to Sandy Stuvik, he gets into the turbulent air behind Stuvik, and that's when he starts to have issues with understeer. That's when the tyres will begin to be used a little bit more than he would like. Hector Hurst now slipping back into the clutches of Yarin Stern. So Hector Hurst, the Emilio de Vlotta motorsport driver, 6th position. He has been passed by Brandon Maisano, so Maisano up into 5th. He's the first car in that train. Then the second with the bright orange helmet is Hector Hurst. His teammate with the green helmet is Yarin Stern. Then they've got Alexandre Cuno as well closing in. So 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, all running very, very tightly to each other in these last stages of the race. It's Valerio Carballo and Alexei Chuklin take the opportunity to find just how rough the curbs are. Les Combes, as they do battle for the last couple of points playing positions. So Maisano with Hurst in his wheel tracks. Then Yarin Stern allowed to accelerate through the Courbe Paul Frere. And this is the section of the circuit where they really just have to plant their right foot and try and take advantage of the slipstream, although none of them look as if they're going to be close enough to challenge into the final chicane on this occasion. Through Blanchimont they come, into line up for the chicane. There's Yarin Stern, his front wing just flexing with the load being placed in it under heavy braking for the chicane before sprinting into what's now the penultimate lap of the race. So this is the point at which they're going to make their challenge. They're really going to have to do it very, very quickly. It's through La Source. They come plummeting downhill. Maisano breaking clear of Hector Hurst. Instead, I think the change that's most likely is Alexandra Kugno at the very rear of the train, possibly on Yaron Stern. You can see there Stern consulting his rear view mirror. He knows that Alexandra Kugno is coming. He's accelerating out of Bradion on to the Kemmel Straight. So are we going to see a change in the order? We've still got that Westek car, which is running a lap down. It's about to be that further behind. All manner of shuffling ongoing. No change in the order, so Yaron Stern still struggling to pick his way past teammate Hector Hurst. It's all given Brandon Maisano the opportunity to just break clear ever so slightly as through the Bruxelles hairpin, and maybe not quite collecting the apex as he would like there. Yaron Stern doesn't give, though, Kugno the opportunity to pounce. The pair of them head through the first of the three. Left-handers on downhill towards the double left-hander. There is Maisano at the head of the queue, then Hurst, Stern and Kugno. None of them quite close enough to really challenge each other. So they sprint on towards Fania. They're only going to have one more run along the Kemmel Straight. It's exactly the same case as well for the race leaders, Sandy Stuvik and Ed Jones. And Jones still, as yet, unable to get himself really onto terms with Sandy Stuvik. Here come the leaders then, accelerating out of Blanchimont on to the bus stop chicane. They're about to start the final lap of the race, and is Sandy Stuvik going to claim his second victory of the season and once more extend his championship lead? He accelerates over the start and finish line and goes into the final lap. His advantage over Ed Jones, 1.3 seconds, and that is as large as it has been in several laps, as Santiago Urrutia and Nelson Mason still not engaged in battle. So Urrutia looking very good for that third place. Nelson Mason, though, has just driven absolutely fantastically to get himself up into fourth. Throw Rouge the final time, and Ed Jones nowhere near Sandy Stuvik, and Stuvik will not come under challenge at all really down the Kemmel Straight, and that's going to be very, very frustrating for Jones, because his best opportunity of snatching victory would have been in the slipstream as Richard Gonda has gone off, the Copper Class leader. Richard Gonda has stopped on the circuit, and that could well give, if things stay as they are, Cameron Twynham the lead of the Copper Class Championship. He was only 6 points behind Gonda coming into today's race, so frustration for Richard Gonda as one of the championship leads comes under severe jeopardy. The other, Sandy Stuvik, who had only been on the podium once in the last 4 races prior to today at Spa, had seen his championship lead being chipped away at by Ed Jones, but he has responded in the best possible fashion by going wheel to wheel with Jones and looking as if he is set for victory. There's a problem there for Gerardo Nieto, whose real wheel has come all askew, so frustration for the Mexican driver. Well, he wasn't actually in contention for Copper Class points. Fortunately, such is the way that the race has unfolded. He was one of the drivers who spun on the first lap over at La Source, as on towards Blanchimont for the final time. Sandy Stuvik looking set for his second victory of the season. It's been a very, very fine performance this from Sandy Stuvik. When he had to get his elbows out in the early stages, he did just that, and then he was able to build that buffer on Ed Jones. Jones hasn't been able to close it back down to fight. Stuvik has not put a wheel wrong all race as he turns through the chicane for the final time. The checkered flag is poised, it's ready, it's waiting, and the win in the 11th race of the 2013 European F3 Open goes to Sandy Stuvik. Second place for Ed Jones. And into third, it's Santiago Urrutia, who withstands a last lap charge from Nelson Mason. What about the fight for 5th, 6th and beyond? So across the line in 5th position, it's Brandon Maisano. In 6th, Yaron Stern. 7th going to Hector Hurst. Alexandra Kugno in 8th. Delight for the RP Motorsport team. This race really couldn't have gone any better for them. Oh, and disaster for Alexei Chuklin on the last lap of the race. And the Russian driver, who was poised to finish in the points, instead has had something go wrong on the final lap as across the line to win the Copper Class, Cameron Twynham. Second place is Chae Wan Lim, and third in the Copper Class, Sean Walkinshaw. So delight for the Team Westtech squad. They claimed the Copper Class victory with Richard Gonda not getting in the points. And that is very, very good news for Westtech and Cameron Twynham, because it should put Twynham into the lead of the Copper Championship. Sandy Stuvik remains in the lead of the championship overall. He has won the race today. He's put a couple more points between himself and Ed Jones. And he was able to withstand that chaotic opening to the race, as we had that very brief shower. It made some of the corners very greasy. Fortunately, the rain went away. The race was able to continue without further interruptions. Let's have a look then at the final results. It's Sandy Stuvik who takes the victory. Ed Jones second and scoring the fastest lap. Third place, Santiago Urrutia fourth. 22nd on the grid, Nelson Mason. Fifth was Brandon Maisano. Sixth, Yaron Stern. Seventh, Hickshurst. Eighth, Alexandre Scudery. Ninth, Valerio Carballo. Jonathan Legree, after that early spin, up into 10th. Cameron Twynham, 14th, and winning the Copper Class for the Dallara F308 chassis. Twynham will be delighted with his second Copper Class victory of the season. 15th and second in the Copper Class was Che Wan Lim, from third in the class and 16th overall. Sean Walkinshaw. Disappointment late in the race for Alexei Chuklim. And also the same for Richard Gonda, who again looked like he had pulled together a remarkable drive from the very, very back of the grid to be in contention for Copper Class victory. Despite the drama in the early stages, we actually only had a small number of casualties. So what does all that do to the Drivers' Championship? Well, it gives Sandy Stuvik a 14-point advantage over Ed Jones. Santiago Urrutia consolidates third position, but drops away from the leading trio with Nelson Mason emphatically in fourth. But Urrutia and Mason are still very much in contention with 5 races to go in the season, the next of which will be here at Spa tomorrow. So the drivers' work of the weekend is only half done, because they've got qualifying very, very first thing tomorrow morning, and then their second race of the weekend, which of course you'll be able to see live through the GT Open website, and it gets underway at 1:30 local time in Belgium. That's 12:30 UK time. And will Sandy Stuvik be able to make it 2 from 2? For now, he celebrates in Parc Ferme at Spa. Handshakes all around with the team. It was a super performance from Stuvik. Second place, Fred Jones, and he and Stuvik having a good scrap. Again, congratulations from the Westtech team. It's always disappointing when you've led a race not to win it, but it was a super scrap between Jones and Stuvik. Santiago Urrutia, third position. Another finish on the rostrum for Urrutia. That's his 6th podium finish of the season. Very, very impressive stuff from the Uruguayan driver in his first year of competition in Formula 3 cars, making the step up from the Formula R Bath Championship, which he was absolutely dominant in last season. So smiles for Sandy Stuvik and the RP Motorsport team. Fred Jones and Team Westtech. A handshake from the team manager, John Miller. It's another podium for Jones. He is very, very much in the championship fight still. Well, let's have a look then at how the race unfolded. And off the line, Sandy Stuvik got away absolutely perfectly, unlike Alexandre Cuno, with whom he shared the front row. It meant they all got a little bit congested heading into the Source for the first time. Stuvik ran out wide, and that then enabled Ed Jones to come through us further back. Chaos ensued, several cars spinning around. Fortunately, none of them getting too locked together. The early stage of the race were frantic. A passing shower made the circuit very, very slippery. It was only fleeting, the shower. It was enough to really catch some of the drivers out in the early stages. There was also the opportunity for others to shine. Artur Janos eventually finished in 13th, but he put together his best finishing position of the season, certainly his most impressive performance thus far. Richard Gonda, another driver who shone in the early stages, racing himself into the lead of the Copper Class past Cameron Twynham. As the race began to settle down, it was really tale of two battles. Sandy Stuvik and Ed Jones for the overall race victory, then Santiago Urrutia and Nelson Mason for the final spot on the podium. As ever, in the copper class, there was plenty of drama to be found. That was Tommaso Mencini on Sean Walkinshaw. That was eventually Walkinshaw who finished clear of Mencini on the line. So it was Sandy Stuvik who came through to score his second victory of the season and maintain his championship lead, with Ed Jones, his principal rival, in second, Santiago Urrutia in third, and Nelson Mason from 22nd on the grid, finishing in fourth. Well, the teams all assembled in pit lane, getting ready for the drivers to be announced onto the rostrum. So third place for Santiago Urrutia. Runner-up, Ed Jones. And then Sandy Stuvik scoring the victory here in the first race of the sixth round at Spa. The Thai national anthem rings out at Spa-Francorchamps in honour of the winner of the 11th race of the 2013 European F3 Open, Sandy Stuvik, who extends his championship lead, and RP Motorsport, the winning team, as the presentation of the trophies gets underway. Jones getting his second place trophy. And then for Sandy Stuvik, the winner's trophy here at Spa in the European F3 Open. And for RP Motorsport, another victory as a team in 2013. The reigning champion team, of course, RP Motorsport, with Nicolo Schiro from last season. Well, they have their driver winning the championship 2 years in a row. Well, you will find out, I'm pretty sure, Barcelona in November, because this is a title fight that is going to go all the way to the wire. Sandy Stuvik, though, having a remarkable season. He is yet to finish any lower than fifth. 11 races in, ultra consistent. Now the hard work of the day is done. Opportunity to celebrate on the rostrum at Spa with the champagne. Podium celebrations for the top three in the race complete, as we get the opportunity to enjoy slow motion action. The cars out on track, and Urrutia in particular, remarkable the way he was just able to slide that car. It wasn't affecting his lap time. Wonderful to watch from Urrutia through the course of the race. In contrast, Ed Jones, as smooth as you like, but devastatingly effective. Jones, who, fortunately for him, had to play second fiddle to Sandy Stuvik today. Stuvik putting together his strongest drive for a couple of rounds now, just when he needed it. The summer break has obviously served its purpose. He has come back refreshed and extended his championship lead. Within the copper class, it's Sean Walkinshaw in third, Chae-Wan Lim in second, and the winner, Cameron Twynham, for Team Westtech. Smiles from Westtech in the pit lane. And for Emilio Auto Motorsport, because they prepare the car of runner-up in the class, Chae-Wan Lim. national anthem for Cameron Twynham as Sean Walkinshaw receives his third place trophy. Super performance that from Walkinshaw, one of the strongest that we've seen from him this year. Shane Wan Lim, we're now beginning to see increasingly frequently on the copper class rostrum, the Korean driver. And for Cameron Twynham, with the problems for Richard Gonda today, he makes the copper class championship fight every bit as close as the one for the overall European F3 Open. Team Westec, 2 cars on the podium in form of Sean Walkinshaw and Cameron Twynham, so they enjoy the spoils of the team trophy. Well, it's been a dramatic race from the European F3 Open here at Spa. We have got the second race of the weekend to look forward to tomorrow. But from now, we'll say goodbye from Spa and see you tomorrow. So hello everybody and a very, very warm welcome to Spa.